Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about distance. Reminder, sometimes I'm going to ask you to pause. You can always pause, rewind, rewatch if you need to. So the distance is the space between 2 points. And space actually probably isn't the best word. So let's say the length of a segment between 2 points. So the first thing I need you to do is I want you to evaluate these problems. And I want you to do this on your own. So pause the video, come back, and we'll check out our answers. Okay, so here are all my answers. The one thing I wanted to emphasize to you is that there is a difference in problems like number 3 and number 2 that are the basic problems so that kind of affect everything. When I square -2 without parentheses, that means -2 times 2, which gives me -4. When I square -5 in parentheses, that means -5 times -5, which is positive 25. So on your calculators, it's really, really important you use the parentheses as you see them. And when we're writing, it's going to be important that we use parentheses. So if I have a triangle, ABC, that is a right triangle, and I always label the sides opposite a vertice with a lowercase. So A would be opposite here, B here, and C here. Now, the important thing that really matters is that C in our Pythagorean theorem is always the hypotenuse, and the hypotenuse is always across from the right angle. So you can find the right angle and kind of draw an arrow, and that's your hypotenuse. So that means our Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So hopefully you remember that. If not, ask me and we can go over it. So now I want you to do these two problems. So pause, come back, and check your answers. Okay, so I plotted my points. You can see that I didn't label my scales. As long as you're going by 1, you don't need to label the scales. So to find the length of AB, since it's purely horizontal, going straight across, I can just count. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So AB is 5. CD, again, since it's vertical, I can just count. So it's 1, 2, 3. Now, this becomes way more complicated when we do a problem like here, where I need to calculate AB, or the distance. Notice when I don't put the segment, that means how long it is, the distance between point A and B, and the length of AB in radical form to the nearest tenth. So how can I do this? Well, the one way I can do this is I can make this into a right triangle. And on Cami, there's a tool, if I remember where it is, under shapes. So there's a tool under shapes where it draws a line. And then what I want to do is from A, I'm going to draw a vertical line. And then from B, I'm going to draw a horizontal line. And they will always intersect to form a right triangle. And now because A to this point I'm going to call C, oops, I'm still on the line tool, sorry. A to this point I'm going to call C is a vertical line, I just count. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm counting hops of my frog. So then from C to B is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now I can remember the Pythagorean theorem, which given our right triangle, here's a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Remember, C is always the part across from the right angle. So in this part, it's what I'm looking for. So I'm going to do a squared plus b squared equals c squared. A squared is going to be 9 plus b squared is 6, or 6 is b. So 9 squared is 81 plus 6 squared is 36. And then I add those two together. I always square first, then add, and I get 117 equals c squared. The opposite of squaring is taking the square root. So it's square root of 117 equals c. Now, if we think back to our algebra class, we want to simplify simplest radical form, but 117 doesn't have any perfect squares. So then I want to take square root of 117 on my calculator, and I get 10.8 to the nearest tenth. Now, you can always do that, but that requires graph paper. There's another way that is essentially the Pythagorean theorem written differently, which is the distance formula. So again, this is if I have 2 points, x1, y1, and x2, y2, I can use the distance formula, which is the square root of x1 minus x2 squared. So I subtract the two x values square, then added to y1 minus y2 squared. So again, I'm going to subtract them and then square. So that's the distance formula. So I want you to pause and try to do number one using the Pythagorean theorem. So hopefully you paused. I'm going to do this out for you. So first I want to do is I want to count how tall this is. So it's 1, 2, 3. Count how wide. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. C is what I'm looking for because it's across from the right angle. So it's 3 squared plus 5 squared equals c squared. 3 squared on my calculator is 9. 5 squared is 25 equals c squared. 9 plus 25 is 34 equals c squared. The last step is to take square root of 34, and that equals c, and they want my answer to the nearest tenth, so I'm going to do that on my calculator, and c is 5.8. That's when the drawing's already given to you. Now go ahead and try to do number 2 and come back and check it. Okay, so the first thing I did is I drew my graph. I counted. It's 1 tall and 8 wide. So then I did the Pythagorean theorem, which is 1 squared plus 8 squared equals c squared. 1 squared is 1. 8 squared is 64. Added them together, got 65. Then took square root, and the answer is 8.1. Now number 3 I'm going to do out with you because number 3 I'm going to use the distance formula because they don't have a graph. So again, my distance formula is d equals the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Now I just realized I did this, but we're going to talk about it. When I gave you the formula, I had x1 minus x2. It really doesn't matter. Those 1s and 2s are just labeling, and really since we're going to subtract and square, the order really truly doesn't matter. But up here in my point, I'm going to label this first point x1, y1, the second point x2, y2. So I'm going to do the square root of x2 is 1 minus negative 3 squared plus y2 is 0 minus y1 is 2 squared. Now I do the order of operations. So 1 minus negative 3, that's 4. So that's 4 squared plus 0 minus 2 is negative 2 squared. I square those. 4 squared is 16. Negative 2 squared in parentheses is positive 4. So that's square root of 20. Now we have to remember how to simplify a radical. Are there perfect square factors in 20? And the answer is yes. 20 can be written as 4 times 5. So it's the square root of 4 times 5. Do the square root of 4 times square root of 5. The square root of 4 is 2. So it's 2 radical 5, which is choice 4. So that's the end of our video today. If you have questions, we will definitely be doing more of this tomorrow in class. Please jot them down.